All right, everybody, come on in, come on in. Thank you all so much for being here. Welcome back to the Wives Club. The Wives Club was started in 2021 when I booked a session with the late, great Kevin Samuels. It wasn't for me, it was because I wanted to give back, and I believed Kevin Samuels when he said the older women should teach the young. So, what we do here is we review Kevin's content each week, usually on Fridays. However, tomorrow is March 1st, and usually the Kevin Samuels channel has new content on the first Friday of every month. So we wanted to make sure you all had the ability to listen to what is coming up over there. We review Kevin's content and we give our perspective as former wives, current wives, and future wives. So I am Maggie, Maggie the substitute teacher. You may know me from my cooking channel. I make food and femininity content. Lucy, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Lucy, and I have a channel that mostly focused on teaching Spanish, but now the content is changing to content about femininity, elegance, and especially for women over a certain age. So hopefully, I'll be posting some stuff. I am kind of going through an identity crisis right now, and that's why I haven't posted anything. But I'm sure I'm going to share some of that stuff in the first post I make of 2024. I think it's my second post because I posted something for New Year's. So hopefully this weekend I'll post something.
Oh my goodness, I understand. For those of you all that are either content creators or considering being a content creator, that's one of the biggest questions. It's like, what should I film about? But I'm sure whatever you make, Lucy, it will be good. So I understand. We got Try Guy Travels in the house. Thank you all for liking the live stream, whether you're watching live or the replay. And we have LB watching on Lucy's channel. Thank you all so much for being here. Okay. Tonight's episode, you see the title, another striking title from Kevin Samuels' channel, and I have my clips here. Y'all know how I do. So it says divorced nurse with two kids overvalues herself. So this was an episode. It's only about 30 minutes, so I suggest that you watch it if you haven't. This was a clip from a live stream where a woman called in. She is a divorced mom of two kids. I can relate. And she says she's not looking for a high value man. She just wants a man that, will respect her, and she's okay to go 50-50. Excuse me, pardon me. And so the line of questioning that Kevin Samuels put her through, I thought it was really interesting because he was able to basically lead her to the same conclusion. And hopefully, after tonight's show, you all will see a lot of times as women, those of us with these big jobs and these big degrees, we think what we're asking for is very simple. And that's fine. Like Kevin used to say, you can want what you want. But when you realize that what you think is simple or easy or just basic, because you've elevated yourself, and there's nothing wrong with that, but now you're only looking at that area because women don't want to go backwards. We only marry to either stay the same or advance. You're really asking for something that is rare. And then you haven't even begun to ask yourself, what does he want? All right, so that's what we're going to get into tonight. So let me go to the bottom of my clips here. And the first comment, well, before I begin, Lucy, what was your original takeaway from this episode?
The way Kevin used to get women to finally state what they really wanted after going around and around with different ways of saying something that at the end turned out to be what Kevin knew from the beginning. Fascinating. He had just a way to just um, granularly get to the point, even though those women were just going around answering the question where, me as a moderator and as an spectator, we're like, get to the point, answer the question. They would not answer the question unless they went through a historical kind of rant before they got to answer the actual question. And this was a perfect example.
Yes, absolutely. And Scorpio, we are glad you're here live too. That is so true. And ladies, Lucy brings up a really good point. When talking to men and answering questions to men, that is a huge frustration, is that we take the long way around the answer. I have had to learn this the hard way too. I share with you all what I've done right and what I've done wrong. So here's a tangible tip. Answer the question first, and then if he wants more commentary, then you can add that. But if you know that it's a no, if you know that it's a yes, if you know that it's up, if you know that it's down, if you know whatever the answer is, just answer it. Because as a spectator, like Lucy said, and those of us in the audience, sometimes we would be like, it's so obvious. Okay, so the first thing that I have is she calls in and she says, I'm a high value woman, but I'm not necessarily looking for a high value man. I just want a man who respects me. And she starts listing her things. And I thought that was really interesting to kind of come out of the gate and say, I'm high value. Two takeaways on that. The first one, ladies, if you don't know, Lucy and I teach a finishing school outside of YouTube. We work on femininity, elegance, and etiquette with women, and humbleness, and being able to receive and not being bragging is definitely something you'll want to work on if you want to be a feminine woman. I always say, I know it's not for everyone. There are lots of different relationships out there, but it's so much better when people compliment you and you receive that graciously than to say, I am. Okay, that was the first takeaway for me. The second takeaway, the problem is, ladies, a lot of times we try to equate what makes a high value man with the same making a high value woman. And they are very, very different. Those of us with our big jobs and our big degrees, because we think we have a breadwinner job, we are on equal playing field as a man. And I have said it over and over again, we are not equal. We are equally valued. It is a very different mindset. And if we're being honest with ourselves, when we get those big jobs, it's because we can take the trips and we can buy the shoes and we can do all the things that we want. That's how a woman thinks. But a man who's ready for a family is already planning, like my man says, to give 80% of it away. He is getting that job and that house and that car, whatever, so that he can have a family and share what he's accumulated. Ladies, we don't think that way. So be mindful of that. Kevin had another episode where he talked about what makes a woman in demand, and we've talked about that, but it is not your job and it is not your accomplishments. Lucy, what would you say about that?
Yes, and when he first started asking her about how many children was she willing to have with the man of her dreams, of the man that she was hoping to marry, and she said, "I would have 1,000 kids," and he's like, "Okay, stop that, stop the exaggeration. That's not how we talk about. Let's get into the reality, into real life. Would you willing? Are you willing to have one or two kids?" Because again, we as women, we go to the extreme. And that's where you saw where from having 1 to 2 kids, she was willing to have 1,000 kids, which, in reality, he said that is impossible in life, and nature does not allow women to have 1,000 kids. So let's back to the real world and talk like adults in the real world.
Such a good point, you all. And Lucy brings it up. Ladies, we are emotional. We are chaotic. That's just how we are. But that's another thing that's very frustrating for men. I know when we get around our friends, we have this dream of what life is going to be like. Men are very practical because they have to be. The type of masculine men that we want have had to build themselves and have had to overcome adversity. So they don't really think pie in the sky and talk pie in the sky. There was another point in the conversation where he kind of got on her and and he was like, cut the BS. And he said it because it's very frustrating for men because they can see right through it and they know you're being disingenuous, I think is what he told her. So that was my next clip, being disingenuous. So one of the things that, Kevin really harped on here, I think as a nurse, let's say she was making 100, 125, 150,000, whatever her salary was, she had a big six-figure job, and that's great. And he asked the questions that he always asks, what percentage of the household bills would you want to have to pay? And she actually said 50%, which is rare. Most women say none, but in her mind, she was like, no, I'll go half. And so he was kind of walking that down. Okay. So that means when there's, new tires to be bought or this expense or whatever, you're going to be okay to pay half. She's like, oh, yeah, I'm already there. I make this much money. And he said, remember, you're talking about doubling your family. Now there's three of you, a woman and two kids. Now you're talking about having a husband and two more kids. So that means you're going to need to find a man that is your financial equal to be able to maintain the standard of living that you have. And that's where she started saying, oh no, he doesn't have to make what I make. And he said, cut it out. Nobody is going to get married to take a step back. So ladies, I thought this was a really fascinating revelation for him to get her to realize, okay, so let's say you make 150 and to go 50% on all the bills as as you say you're willing to do, that means you need to find another man who also makes 150, top, 1%, 10% of income. And she says, okay. But then he says, but wait a minute. What does he want? And this has been one of the most fascinating questions for me when women just say what they want and, they have their dream list and it's like, okay, that's great. I hear you. Have you thought about what the man wants? And the bottom line is, ladies, when a man is making 150,000 or more, he wants the best for the effort that he's put into it. And usually men that go for those big type of jobs, they're looking for a wife and mother to create their own family. And truth be told, they really don't want an older woman. She was 35, so she was already at geriatric pregnancy. It's just science. So she was 35 and she already had two kids from, her first husband. So when you look at it that way, why would a man who has put himself in some of the best positions that he can choose a woman that's not a first choice for most men? And that's where she really started to think, because in her mind, she was like, yeah, I'll go 50, I'll go half on everything. That's enough, right? And honestly, it wasn't. And that's where we mess up, ladies, when we think, I don't really need anybody that's high value. That's actually what she was asking for. She didn't even know. What would you add to that, Lucy?
I have it on my notes right here, the 50% thing. He, when he asked, are you willing to support 50% of the financial burden, even when married with four kids? He goes, you're from Chicago, Illinois, your middle class lifestyle for a family of four. Her answer was still 150K. So it wasn't, it's funny because the math wasn't making sense to her. And even though he kept going around and trying to figure out, it was still 150K that that's how it was going to be. So she didn't realize that she would be doubling the cost if the family grew. If it was a family of six, you still want to stick to that 50% concept. So he was saying, you're mathing. That girl math in your head that you're trying to do is not going to work in reality. And that was one of the most fascinating things that he had. It took our Cinderella dreams, he brought them back to reality. This is how the world actually works. And some of us did not like that. And that's why he got so much pushback because, you know, the truth sometimes hurts. And some of us are not willing to listen to it because we want to see that imaginary world that we have created since we are babies playing with our Barbie dolls.
That's so true, that imaginary world. And ladies, we are all guilty of it. I remember, having my dreams and everything I wanted. It's almost like we build it kind of like the Barbie, and I just want the Ken doll. Like everything is already sorted out. You just come here and you are my forever plus one. That's not how it works. Men are the one who control relationships. And I remember when I was, new in my marriage, I got married at 25 and I was, having some struggles and I was, complaining to my dad and he was like, Maggie, you need to work this out because it's going to be hard for you. Meaning, ladies, here's the thing to be mindful of. Yes, you can go get any job that you want. And yes, you control your womb. But when you come to a relationship already at a certain level, you're looking for the same or more, you're going to shrink your pool of available men without even realizing it. So the next thing I have in my notes, Kevin was talking about, we've already talked about if we're honest with ourselves, women, we don't marry or go into any relationship to take a step back. So just be mindful of that when you're climbing that corporate ladder and going for those big jobs. What are the men looking for? They're looking for the best option because it's taken them a lot to get there. And we don't want to take a step back in our relationships. So this is when it started to go a little bit, I won't say off the rails, but when he started to ask her, okay, so you are willing to go 50-50, that means you want a man who's also making 150,000, just like you. What does he want? And, he started going through the questions, height, weight, dress size, all of that, and asked her about her fresh face out of the shower. And she rated herself a 9. And this is not to say, I know this was a trigger for a lot of women. This is not to say anything about, your looks per se. But I loved when Kevin started asking about outcomes. And this is something that cannot be denied. I have told you all, I believe I'm a 5. I'm an average woman. I do not turn heads when I walk into a room, meaning I don't have 8, 9, and 10 outcomes. And this is something that I think we really need to think about as women because he was asking her, he said, okay, you're a 9. What modeling have you done? Basically, what is your scale? If you're a 9, what is a 10? And ladies, we all know this. You know a knockout when you see one. We've all been to the grocery store and you see a woman, she can be in athletic clothes and just like perfect from head to toe. That is not most of us. You are not the type of person that men of all ages, men of all nationalities, when you travel, people are kind of like, I've got to get you to model for me. So we just need to adjust our opinions of ourselves. And I think that will help us choose something that's more viable because what ends up happening, and when he talked about that, he was like, okay, if you are a 9, then what is a 10? We have overvalued ourselves when it comes to what we can realistically ask for in relationship. What would you add to that, Lucy?
Yeah, that rating system is fascinating. And again, that's the first time that I started learning about that was through Kevin Samuels. I don't ever remember in my 54 years, because I think I started watching him 55 or 56, I don't remember, ever hearing about me rating myself to something because it was never an issue. But now, unfortunately, it seems that um, women have been conditioned to think that they are the greatest thing on earth and that they cannot do wrong, where they rate themselves very high, 9 and 10, like if there isn't anything they have to fix about who they are. So I think about, when you have at work, you have that evaluation about what you've done throughout the year and what can you improve for the next year to get to that, a higher bar. These women don't think about those things. It's like, you are perfection. How is that? And then in my head, I'm thinking, compared to what? What are you comparing that perfection to? And that's where he started bringing Beyonce and Kelly Rowland and all of those other women that are considered, high ranking women to kind of let them know that no, yeah, you have that rating in your head about who you are, but that's again, let's bring you down to the real world and show you how the real world men see you in real life.
Absolutely. And on his scale, he gave her a 6. And this is not about the number, so I don't want the ladies to fixate on the number, but he was like, you're cute. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being average. When I talk to women, it's almost like they take offense if it's not like I'm a perfect, I'm a boss, like there's nothing wrong with me. And ultimately where you end up is alone. And that takes me to my next point. He was asking about her relationship history since the divorce. And so she had been married, and then she said she had an accountant. She had been proposed to twice. How this happens for these women, but okay. She had an accountant that proposed to her, and she had a physician that proposed to her. And Kevin is kind of like, well, what in the heck happened with those relationships? And she said one man was unfaithful and another man, there was something wrong with each of them. And he was like, you are a woman that's, older in years for marrying age. You're in your 30s. You have had two men propose to you. You've turned both of them down. I love the question that he asked her. It was almost comical but sad. He was like, how many of these video game lives do you think you're going to have? And I see this with women. It's just, especially if you're attractive and you're used to getting a lot of attention. One of the questions that he asked her, which was not funny, is, you think you're going to get unlimited choices. Do you realize that there will come a time when men just stop paying you attention? Ladies, the time that you have to date, to select and get yourself out of the dating pool is a small window. You're not going to forever have these options just like, this one won't do. Oh, this one I found something wrong with. As an older woman with two kids, and of course, nobody wants to hear the word settle, but sometimes you just have to decide what you can live with and make the most of that. Or you can grow old alone, which is what he talked about. And unfortunately, a lot of women are finding themselves in that situation. What would you add to that, Lucy?
I agree. And to have two proposals and to say no to both of them, that's very rare. But it seems that we heard that on his show all the time. All these women always had proposals and rings. Sorry, my shocking, my dog. Um, but they never sealed the deal. So that's very strange. And again, and that also goes back to, you know, maybe these women from very young learning that they were going to go jump from one interest to another interest, trying to find that perfect one until you get to your late 30s, early 40s, and you're still trying to pick, thinking that you still have that opportunity when the picking starts going away. You don't have that much to pick from. And then you have the courage to say no to two proposals. That's astonishing.
Yes, absolutely astonishing. And you hit the nail on the head. Kevin was saying that a lot of women are looking for perfection. And ladies, if you ask any woman, any man, especially anybody in a relationship, you don't have a perfect 10. We aren't a perfect 10. If you wanted to, you could find something that drives us nuts about our husband or our loved one, our significant other. Excuse me. But I think making a decision to focus on the positive and saying, okay, these are my bottom line deal breakers. Anything other than that, I can work with. But I see this a lot where women are, well, I don't like this about him. I don't like that about him. I need to be happy. I prefer to do this type of lifestyle. And it's like, okay, all that's happening is that time is going on and on. And then you find yourself where it's just kind of like you've turned down everything and then you're looking behind you And again, she was one of those women because he asked who filed for divorce. She left for whatever her reasons were. And so now you have had the opportunity to get married 3 times, and you are still out here looking. And so, ladies, I just want to address that. When we look realistically at who we are and how we show up on the dating market, not just because we think we're perfect, but really, if a man is wife shopping because you are husband shopping, he's going to want the best deal for himself. And because we think so highly about ourselves, we end up with nothing. Where, if you ask me, I think something is better than nothing. But you can't argue with people. You want what you want. He talked about her already being at geriatric pregnancy, which is going to be a risk for any man who wants children of his own. Even if you're willing to give him them, why would he put you through that and put himself through that, plus 2 other children that aren't his? So it's going to be very, very difficult. What would you add to that, Lucy?
Yeah, and once again, he was the one who started talking about the likelihood of women being the ones that file for divorce first than men. I started hearing that statistic from him. And yeah, after 8 years married, she filed for divorce because he was verbally abusive. So again, that is such a subjective concept. How verbally abusive was it? Because he asked you to cook, he asked you to clean, he asked you to do this, and you took it as being as abusive. He asked her, "Did you file, a police report, or did you do all of these things that if indeed it was that bad, you would have some kind of verification, a corroboration that that really happened, or did you put the verbal abuse as an excuse to just get out of that um, marriage with 2 kids, looking for what?" In the end, sadly, it seems that she was still looking for that, knight in shining armor at 35 with 2 kids, and it's probably not going to happen. We wish that she was the exception to the rule, that it happened, but probably with how things are going right now in modern world, it's probably sadly not going to happen.
Absolutely. So I've got a couple more points, and then I'd love to know what you all think. I'll drop the link. As always, I link the Kevin Samuels episode in the description. This one was divorced nurse with 2 kids, overvalues herself. So after he had this conversation with her, and again, it was a really good one to watch. It was about 30 minutes. He realized, and he told her, he said, ma'am, we attract who we are. And this one is really hard to, it's a bitter pill to swallow. But what he was telling her, in all of these relationships, you have been the common denominator. And if you are the person that's never satisfied, or, someone speaks to you harshly and now, you're saying that it's verbal abuse or whatever, I think a lot of times women just don't understand the way men communicate. They're very direct, they get to the point, and sometimes it can seem harsh if you're not used to that. But now you found yourself out here looking, and you're not in your prime because you've already given kids to someone else, and you're an older woman. Even if you're fit, feminine, and friendly, it still, takes away from the 9 that you think that you are. So I want ladies to think about that, especially if you have a long list of men or even multiple men that you've dated, and when someone asks you, well, what happened with that relationship? Oh, he was abusive. Oh, he was a narcissist. Oh, he was whatever, he was not faithful. As much as you think you're making the other person look like a bad candidate for relationship, it really speaks poorly to your decision making, and it does not reflect well on you. Accountability is important. We were there. We chose to go for what we went for. And I would ask myself, if all of the men that I have dated or have been attracted to me, there's been some huge character flaw, what does that say about me that I continue to attract and continue to choose and, God forbid, continue to entertain or have relationships with somebody who now I can just slap a label on and say, oh, they were a narcissist? And we don't even know what that means. We are not physicians. The last thing that I have in my notes is, Kevin said this is often why a lot of female matchmakers have kind of stopped trying to match women because we don't want just a good man. We're looking for perfection and we're never satisfied. And we don't bring to the table as much as what we think when it comes to what men want for a relationship. A lot of times we look at ourselves and all the things we've accomplished and it's like, I'm a 10, I'm doing great. But he doesn't value it the way that you value it. So just be mindful of that. And, ladies, the last thing that I'll say, and this is kind of harsh, but it's true because my man tells me all the time, he's not getting everything that he wants either. So as much as we think we're so great and as much as we think we have all these qualities, if you asked your man, are you his dream girl? Probably not. Are you, the perfect whatever, body that he could dream of? Probably not. Do you have the best attitude in the world? Probably not. Are you as consistent as he would love to be? You show up the same way every day? Probably not. Yet and still, they choose us and they love us and they care for us, provide for us, protect us, knowing that we're not tens. We're a five on a good day, sometimes a three. So I just wanted to offer that, ladies, and, let it sting at first, but then let it settle with, you know what? I'm kind of a lot, but he still continues to choose me even with all my mess. I'm going to do my absolute best and make this the best relationship that I can. What would you add, Lucy?
I agree. And that's the beautiful thing about, men. They see that we're a lot and they still stick with us. They give us grace because smart men are the ones that I say, you know what? She's got her quirks and she's got her little things, but her values and her character and her she can, make a home out of this house. And, if I had kids, she would probably say she's a good mother to our kids. So everything, all that craziness that we bring, that we need to realize that we do bring. In fact, I saw this study just right now, it recently said that I saw it in a before I got on the stream that said that women, we are crazier than we thought we were. So again, we are a hands full, and we need to realize that, that the men that are with us, they love us as we are, and we are asking so much from them that, it's probably exhausting for them, and they go along with our craziness no matter what. So again, one of those things that we as women need to do is realize that we're a lot, and allow and give our men credit for taking on that much of a lot that we give, and appreciate them for who they are, for what they give to us, for the world they've built for us, to be able to show our craziness and to be able to be the women that we are. And and they love us, they look at us. The other day I caught my husband just watching me, just looking at me like, this is the woman I'm with. And that is such a beautiful thing to know that with all my, because I know I'm a little crazy sometimes, that he still looks at me like me. I mean, like, that's my wife. I love her for who she is. So again, women, just let's, get back into reality and look at the men, the 80% of they can offer, and just disregard the 20%, because again, we could be 90% crazy, and they take on, that 90% as it comes.
Absolutely. And we could be 100% alone if we wanted to insist on checking off everything on that list. Let's see what you all are saying in the chat. We got Lisa in the house. She says, I guess that's why 70 to 80% of divorces are initiated by women. It's kind of a fantasy world we can be looking for. That's true. It is a fantasy. And if you talk to anyone who's been in a relationship, married for any length of time, all of us have a story. And the other thing, ladies, that I'd love to, make sure you're aware for tangible tips, a lot of the allowances that you get from your man, your husband, comes with time, meaning you have put in the time and they know, you know what, she's having a moment. Just let her have her moment. I've seen enough consistency and enough positive things that keep me coming around. You all know I have a silly side. I have a very silly side. It's not always appropriate, but I remember my man took me somewhere. I can't remember, just like a getaway, and there was like this big tub and it had bubble bath, and I poured the whole bottle and turned on the juice, and it was like this mountain of like bubbles, and I was having the greatest time. I was in there by myself, and he came to check on me and just looked at me, and imagine those Instagram and TikToks where the kids just soap everywhere, and he just kind of put his hands on my head. He was like, you were just you're just like a kid. And I was like, I know, and I love it here. And he was just like, he just allows me to have my moments because he knows the value that I bring. And so the point is that, ladies, you're not going to show up and expect those allowances and graces from day one. We really have to earn that. So the time that you spend saying, no, this one isn't good enough, and no, that one isn't good enough, you're not really building that relationship equity so that you have, a little bit of allowances, because I'm telling you, especially a man who's on his purpose, he expects certain things. Like my man says, you need to be ready when I'm ready. Full stop. Like if you haven't been there from the beginning, if you haven't been through the hard times, you need to be on it, doggone it. So we're hopefully, young ladies, realize, find a suitable mate, get out of the dating market and build something real. Next Level says she makes a mean ham and cheese. Lucy's husband said, that's right. Lucy was making sandwiches. Look, sandwich in silence. Absolutely. Lisa's laughing. That's why we stop and stare. Absolutely. Just look at us crazy and just kind of shake their head. Shapeshifter says, no, long time no see, ladies. Just sending positive energy and love. Always classy and full of wisdom, peace, love, and prosperity. Thank you so much. What would you add to that, Lucy?
Yeah, I just think that it's important. I think Kevin Samuels also asked that question about what do you want your life to be when you're 50, 60, 70 years old? And that was for me one of the things. I think it was the night where I was mad at my husband. And I'm thinking about all of these stories I'm making in my head. And then he asked that question, and it's like, wow, I don't see myself without him in my life. So it's one of those things that, if you're thinking about even destroying a marriage, a relationship, what are you doing to the kids? What are you doing to the entire family? Because somewhat you're not being happy. Again, marriage is not only just because that it's going to be happy every day, is that duty of care. And that duty of care, it takes a while to see, I get sick, he gets sick. How do we take care of each other? So it's one of those things that it's important. If you're having issues with your significant other, think about that questions. Do you see yourself caring for that man when he's 70, 80, 90 years old? And would he care for you as well? I absolutely see him caring for me as well. So again, it's such an important thing to, he brought up some really good um, food for thought that I had never even imagined to ask myself. But it allowed me to sit back and say, wow, he's making an excellent point.
It's so true, ladies, and it happens sooner than we think. You know, when Kevin asks that question, what do you want life to look like when you're 40, 50, 60? Lucy and I are both two older women here, and we share from our perspective. And I think she was 34, and he asked her the question, do you think there's ever going to come a time when this video game ends? Like men are just going to not continue to pursue you and give you attention? She's like, oh, yeah, maybe when I'm 40. And he was like, no, you're kind of there right now at 35. Now, obviously, is all hope lost? No, you can absolutely find love over 40. But the expectation that it's just going to be as easy and you're going to have all the options and all the pickings and all the choices that you had when you were young, I think that's what gets a lot of women confused, because it hits them like a freight train and they didn't see it coming. All of a sudden, the phone stops ringing. All of a sudden, the invites out and the plus ones and the trips, and it just stops coming. Especially if you're the type of woman that got a lot of attention and you had that leverage young and you didn't use that time wisely to secure a real relationship, you find yourself on the outside looking in. So, young women, heed my warning. If you have the ability to actually make something that's real, put the time in, because it is, as an older woman, you know, I'll be 49 later this year. And the kids are, you know, going to be up and out. Today, my ex-husband and I met. You all know we co-parent well together. Our oldest wants to go into the military. He scored really well on the ASVAB, so all of the branches have called, and so we're making our rounds. And Dad and I were sitting right, you know, on either side of Marcus at the Navy today and listening to what they have. And we were there at the Marines, and we're making our rounds. And the recruiter said something about, you know, you don't really see that. So even if the relationship ends, like, make the most of the family that you started, because you're always going to be connected. And let's face it, another man doesn't want to come in and be stepdad. That's, men don't grow up dreaming about taking care of someone else's kids. They just don't. Let's see what else you all are saying in the chat. Next Level says modern westernized women have unrealistic expectations. Ouch. I wish I could disagree, but it's true. Social media has us thinking we're supposed to have what everybody else has. Poof, just like that. Number one, a lot of it isn't real. And number two, we don't get that just because we want it. What does Lisa say? I seriously don't think these ladies in their 20s really understand how fast life goes by. Oh my goodness, that is so true. I've got some thoughts, but what would you say, Lucy?
I agree with Lisa. I have a niece that is in her early 20s, and she thinks that, you know, she's going to have the same type of world in her 30s that she has in her early 20s. And of course, Tia Lucy says, you know, you need to start looking for, you know, that husband, before you're 30. It would be a good idea that you start thinking about a family, and how you're going to make a family life together with a great husband. But of course, Tia Lucy is Tia Lucy, and she's just talking. Hopefully, she's not going to get to 27, 28, 29 thinking that the 30s are going to be the same and then be very disappointed. So, fingers crossed, she's still young, and I'm hoping that she understands why we are pushing her aunties are pushing the concept of finding a mate and making a family while they're young.
Absolutely. Lucy and I were both married in our 20s. And ladies, you don't need a lot of experiences. When you get to this part of life, it's so nice to not have regrets, to know that you gave your best effort, like even if the marriage doesn't work out. But um, I love what Lisa says about you have no idea how fast life passes by. And those of us 40, 50, 60, we remember our 20-year-old selves. We remember our 30-year-old selves. And I'm still that person on the inside. But as much as I think I have youthful energy, which I do, when I see a 30-year-old woman, when I see a 20-year-old woman, you cannot deny it. The mantle has passed, that ship has sailed. So we take our place here as older women teaching the young. But I see that in a lot of women who think I've still got it. Youth is youth. It just is what it is, and it's fleeting, and we all had our time in the sun. Yes, Eric says things go by quickly. Absolutely. Next Level has a question. He says, ladies, do you have a list of questions that ladies should ask potential mates? Ooh, this is a good one. So I'll take a stab at this. So I have always said that the purpose of dating is to determine if this is a suitable match for marriage or long term. I think a lot of modern women have gotten it confused that this is my ticket to get out of the house. This is my ticket to go get that meal at that restaurant I want to try, or that trip, or that purse, or whatever. No, none of that. You can do that for yourself if you must have. But when dating, just like you're being vetted, you want to vet. So to me, of course, I would want to know what he does as far as work. Not so much for income, because of course I would expect a provider because I want to be that support system. But I would want to know, what is his daily routine? Is this someone who works kind of a 9 to 5 and he comes home? Is he, travel a lot for work? Does he have long shifts? I would want to know how I could adjust myself if I see that this is someone that is husband material. I would want to know about that. I would want to know about his family of origin, as well as what he wants for his family. Some of us had a great family experience and we want to create the same. Some of us didn't have a great family experience, and so we want to build something differently. I would want to know his deal breakers. And ladies, listen, when a man tells you that there was something in the past, maybe from an ex-girlfriend that he didn't like, listen and make sure not to repeat the same. What would you add, Lucy?
I was gonna add something, but I my keyboard is just goes crazy. And instead of answering to I am Eric Hall, I wrote Erica Hall. So I'm sorry, Eric, for for my keyboard having a life of its own. Anyway, what I was thinking on uh God, I lost my train of thought. What was the question again?
No problem. This was for Next Level. And shout out to Eric Hall. Knew Kevin Samuels and
Oh,
attended his
oh,
events. Yes, absolutely. And we're streaming tonight because we know the first Friday is always new content. Next Level had a question about, do we have questions that ladies should ask potential mates?
yes, I would ask what they do on their downtime. Do they have hobbies? What do they do? Because then that way I could maybe my downtime could match what they do. My husband, he loves hiking. And I remember he took me, I think it was like our fourth or fifth date. He took me hiking to show me what he loved about things. And I think he was testing me to see what my endurance was, because we were climbing mountains, we were going up and down to see how tired I would go. And of course, he showed me that he was strong by jumping from place to place. He was doing his manly thing, and that was just, my God, I loved him from the second of it, because I saw he was his agility, that manly thing that they show you that you as a woman, and it's like, oh, he knows how to do things. So things that might make you compatible. You know, how is the his family life? Does he get along with his mom, dad? Does he have any siblings? Things that kind of let me know whether he's got a stable, he has known about a stable environment or not.
That is so, so true. I love that. And we love the manly things. We've got about 10 minutes left. If you all have any other questions, you can put them in the chat and I'll drop the link again. But I love what you said about the manly things, Lucy. I had that same experience. So, my man and my ex-husband and me work in tech. And so we're all just kind of like, nerds in that way. And I remember one of the first times I was going to call a handyman for something. I can't remember what it was. And my man just happened to come over and something, let's say it was a filter or a light or something, and he just brought his tools and he just did it. And I was like, oh, you can fix stuff? Because I can't fix anything and I'm not strong. And I just remember watching him put it together or take it up. I can't even remember what it was, but the fact that he was like, because I think the handyman was delayed, like he could come in a few days or whatever. He just brought his tools without asking and just did it. And I was like, goodness, this is so attractive. I mean, ladies, we joke, but I think it's really important because human nature hasn't changed in all of these thousands of years. We are wired to want a masculine man that can do things for him. And I think we're also wired to love and support and adore. And I think that's the best version of ourselves. Of course, there's all kind of different types of relationships, but I'll offer this because I was talking to my man earlier today. Even though we live in this modern world, most men that are the caliber of men that we want to marry, and like Kevin Samuels has said, a man doesn't kind of come into his own until about 40 because he realizes at about 30, then it takes him that 10 years to really establish. So if you're in that Gen X or I guess late millennial time frame, they remember their mothers and their grandmothers. And they remember the caliber of women that were solid quality women. So ladies, don't fool yourselves that just because we're in this new fast-paced modern society and it's 50-50 and whatever we think is what we want, a man is measuring us with the yardstick of his own experiences. And if he had a good, solid family, he's going to want that for his kids, whether they're children from you or you're going to be stepmom, or he wants that grandmother experience for his legacy. So be mindful of that. You can say as much as you want to, I don't do this, I don't do that, but you are being judged according to his life experience. So you want to keep that in mind. What would you add, Lucy?
I agree. And I see a lot of these young ladies in social media being so proud of saying, you know, I don't cook, I don't clean, I don't do all these things. And the potential mate is looking at this and saying, well, that's not what I want for a potential wife. So again, don't take pride for not for being useless. I mean, when you get into a relationship, they are the man wants you to be an asset to him. How are you going to help him in his world? Are you just going to sit back and eat chocolates and bonbons and expect to have a somebody to drive for you, to clean for you? No, you want to be an asset in their world. And saying that you don't cook, you don't clean, that's not a good thing to say. That's not something to be proud of.
I agree. We need a translation if you don't mind here, Lucy.
He says that some men are only child or only children. So I'm not sure where that were we talking about maybe siblings? and maybe asking whether they do have siblings or not, and how I think that it would be interesting to have dated somebody that was only child. I would ask so many questions because I ask a lot of questions. And my husband, poor guy, I swear, even after 16 years being married, you can tell his beautiful mind. It's like she's asking me questions. Oh no. So I would ask, how was your life as a single, as an only child? Did you want to have siblings? Did you have a lot of friends? So again, it's probing into how his life without any siblings was like.
That's so true. I love this next level says Lucy is preaching hashtag useless, but it's true. And I got that exact word from my man earlier today. He said, I am just amazed that so many women think they don't have to do anything. A lot of women just think, well, I'm here, so that's enough. And again, remember, you can say, I'm not your mom, I'm not your grandma, I'm not this, I'm not that, but any man alive today has seen or has experienced a woman who is able to balance multiple things for the family and does it with joy, and it's her honor to serve. So if that's not who you are, that's fine. It's one thing if you didn't have that experience and you're open and willing to learn, but it's going to be a hard sell if you are just like, I'm just here. And you're going to still have to make sure everything gets done because I'm just here and I'm just going to be here. So we have one other translation. I'll let you answer this one, Lucy, and then we will close out.
Women always say that they were the only child in the family. So I'm thinking that that's part of maybe thinking that, we were spoiled, or, we did it our way and there was nobody to tell us otherwise.
I love that. And Shapeshifter is saying, I am 38. You are spot on, Miss Maggie. I remember my grand and my great grandmother. So I witnessed two different generations of classic family women. So, yes, ladies, maybe after Lucy and I are long gone, and, if the feminists win and we have a genderless society run by robots, okay, I'm exaggerating, but someone as young as 38, the men that are choosing, they have an example. So just be mindful of that. And KS is still going on, Lucy.
So he says, women in social networks say that maybe not, no lo hagan tras bambalinas. I don't know what that means, KS. Please translate it, because it might be from a specific area in Latin America, and I don't know what tras bambalinas means.
Well, if you don't know, I absolutely don't know. So we will go ahead and wrap it up here. Eric Hall, I don't know if you're still in the chat, but since you manage part of the Kevin Samuels channel, if you want to let us know what is coming on tomorrow. Usually the Wives Club, we stream for you all on Friday evenings, but the first Friday of every month is usually new content on the Kevin Samuels channel. So we want everybody to watch that tomorrow, and we will join you in the chat, and we will be back with you all next week with another Kevin Samuels episode and our take on it as the older women who want to teach the young. Thank you all so much for watching. As always, Kevin Samuels changed my life, and I will never forget his contribution. And so that's why we keep this going. So, any final words, Lucy?
I think somebody had a question about, was there a specific time that you um, were either did not appreciate your man, or something like that, and what did you do about it? I did, before I met Kevin Samuels, I did not see how valuable, well, I did see it, but not at that extent, how valuable men are for society. And he started asking those questions as a woman, to see that perspective. And to me, that made me just value my husband 100% more, because those questions that he was asking, I had never asked myself. And he made me see um, the world of a man by what he was presenting.
Such a good question. I'll go ahead and answer this. Sorry, Next Level, I missed it, but thank you, Lucy. He says, did either of you go through a time when you demonstrated ingratitude in your relationships? How did you address and correct it? Yes, and I can say, I was selfish with his time. One of the things that Kevin Samuels had me realize is how difficult a man's life is just on the day to day. Every time they leave the house, the enemy is at, they operate like the enemy is at the gate. Someone wants to take what they have, whether it's, their home, their possessions, their career, their woman, anything. So a man is always on the defensive, and he has a lot of responsibilities, and there's a lot on his plate. And just like a girl, I had kind of had that, well, what about me? And we haven't gone anywhere. We haven't done anything. And, just kind of being a typical woman. And so I really started to get an appreciation for when a man makes time for you, he is actually not doing other things so that he can spend time with you, take you out if you want to go out, trips or dinners, or even if it's just coming over and watching the game. So I realized that, and the way I corrected it was to, one, be grateful. Even if he's just coming over, I always make sure that I cook for him and a plate to go. Thank him for his time. But I know I have a lot of like nervous energy. So a big part of the reason why I have a YouTube channel, why I do the finishing school, why I travel, why I do a lot of things, go to the ballet, go to the symphony, is to occupy myself with productive things. So I'm not just sitting here, waiting and pouting. So when he does reach out, I'm in a good mood, I've done something productive, and I've come to the relationship and the next time that we've spent together with joy. Because when you just think the world revolves around you and all of his free time should be spent with you, and he doesn't have any other family members, he doesn't have any other responsibilities, he doesn't want to just not speak and put his feet up and drink a beer or whiskey or whatever. When you think about it, it's just kind of like, you're here to make my life enjoyable. That is definitely not gratitude. So I fixed that. So thank you for the question. We always like to share what we've done right and what we've done wrong. Oh, you're so welcome for answering the questions. Lucy, did any clarity here?
Yes, he says that women in social media say, I won't cook, I won't clean, I won't do that with my boyfriend already living with him. So again, yeah, again, he's trying to say, even though they're already living, a married life, the women are saying, I won't cook and clean until I get that ring. Well, you know, this is a test drive for you. And every woman and young woman and man, they need to take classes of boxing and go to the gym to get all that, I'm thinking, all that energy out, I'm thinking.
Absolutely. All right. So I'm glad we got to your questions. Eric Hall says tomorrow on the Kevin Samuels channel, the stream will be about relationship prep. So I will see you all. We will see you all in the chat. So you won't have us Friday night. We'll all be watching. And then we will be back next week with our response to another Kevin Samuels episode. Now, any final words, Lucy?
I guess see you all tomorrow at Kevin Samuels. I think it just, I won't say live, but looking at what he has to offer, and we will be live in the chat.
Absolutely. We will always be there for the premiere. And even though he is gone, his legacy lives on. He left us such a catalog, and the message will continue. So until next time, everyone, adios.